These lifeboats are just absolutely stunning models done by some fantastic craftsmen that I wish to emulate. As part of my learning curve, today we're going to phase 2 of building high quality lifeboats, in this case for the Naparima. I've seen so many beautiful lifeboats, almost as beautiful as the full scale models, and wondered how they got that quality of finish in such a tiny piece. And then of course stumbled across a few pieces of literature and photographs that show that most of them were built using a mold of some sort. And so I've decided that I would carve a mold and make a blank, and I would be able to build the frames on that mold and make a high quality lifeboat. So here we go. The first thing we did was to make a photocopy of both surfaces, looking down on the lifeboat and of course looking at it from the side. Doing these to whatever scale you're going to make your lifeboats at, and you can scale these up and down on most printers, and then put these pieces onto a blank piece of wood. In my case, I'm using mahogany because it's nice and easy to carve, and from that we'll make the blank. And then we lightly score the top side, very, very light, just to make sure that it's square. It's just the easiest way of getting an absolute center line. Then we measure off the plan and square it off using a square, and then cut it off on the table. And now we just stick the blank onto the block. I'm going to use PVA glue because I want a nice, good, heavy stick. And the same thing on the side. And we leave that to dry. Now using the bandsaw, we cut the pieces off. While it's still a square block and it has flat surfaces, again this is a time to put some marks on it. So I made up a little sled, and I put this sled in here. I take it on the drill press and I drill a series of holes so that the blank is square. This allows me to continue while I'm shaping the hull, that I can put it on the milling machine, I can put it on a drill press, I can put it on the table saw. Because what you need to do as you're shaping the boat is you need to make a series of lines on both sides of the hull that will allow you to get an even shaped carved hull, and this is the actual blank that I've produced. Now you'll notice on my blank that the ribs are spaced very evenly, and we do that with a jig, and the jig comes back to this little frame box where the blank is placed upside down in it, and we pin it in place, and then we go on the table saw, and just like we were making ladders and doors, we have a spacer, and we use a spacer, and in this case I have the ribs spaced at 12-inch centers. So just to repeat, you decide where your first rib is going to go, and you turn your saw on and you cut it. Then you use, in my case, the 12-inch spacer, which means you take the fence off, push the fence back up, so you have a 12-inch space. Then you take the spacer out, push the block up against, and then run it on the table saw, and you'll get your second cut of 12 inches, and you go right through. So you'll see that these slots line up with each of the ribs right through, and that's how I got them evenly spaced. There's just no other way to do that other than in a jig. So once you have the lines all scored, which is just on the bottom of the boat, you'd take a square and a pencil and continue the lines right across so you get an absolutely square, straight line lining up with the score on the bottom. And then what I've done is I take a took a file, and a very thin file, and cut the groove, and then continued opening up the groove with different size files. What I tend to do is make this groove to hold the rib a bit bigger than the size of the frame, so that it's not fitting too tight, because when it comes to take this out, you don't want it stuck. You want it actually free, because you're going to stick it with PVA glue right at the edge of the mold, and then you're going to plank the boat, and then when it comes to release the boat off of the mold, you're going to put some 100% or 90% alcohol to free the PVA, and that'll pull it off. The other thing about the mold is that when it was all finished and polished and I had it down exactly as I wanted, I put thin CA, because this is mahogany, so it's very easily damaged, and I wanted to stiffen it up. So I put thin CA, sanded it again, and then polished it with mold release wax. So that means that whatever I put here, when I have to pull it off the mold, it'll come off very easily. To make the ribs or the frames, depending on what you refer to them, the type of wood has to be a wood that's going to bend quite easily. And I have three types of wood available to me. The juniper, which I make most of my frames out of, some coffee wood, and I put aside some guava wood, because I remember as a child guava being a very bendy wood. And I got a few pieces of it and put it aside to dry, and it actually has turned out to be the best wood that I have in my selection for bending. So you'll have to figure out what wood is available to you and perhaps do some experiments. But the guava wood seems to hold its shape the best and isn't prone to splitting when you put those bends on it. The mold, you'll see, has a little ledge that I've cut out on the inside, which allows me that when I'm bending the plank, I can put it on the plank and hold the piece and then bend it. So you need to figure out how you're going to bend to get the first shape on your mold. As I said, I've used all sorts of different methods. I've tried steaming, putting them in a hot water kettle. The most recent one was taking a rice colander and letting the steam come through the colander. None of them worked as effectively as simply putting the pieces of wood straight into some boiling water, and I just put a fork on top of them and let them weigh down so they're properly soaked in the water, and I leave them there for 5 to 10 minutes to let them boil. I have no idea what the correct time is, and I think of pieces of wood this small, it's really not a lot of time. In big steam boxes, you see people putting it in for 20 and 30 minutes. I think 5 minutes in boiling water is more than enough to do what is required. When you read the literature, you'll find what we're really trying to do is heat up the lignum, and they say if you don't heat it enough, it won't be elastic, and if you heat it too much, it gets inelastic. So that's really what the magic is, and once the piece cools down, it will retain that shape and not spring back. So here we go, we've hit the 5-minute barrier, and now we're going to just take them out and start to bend them. And you'll put a lot of pressure on the guava wood as you bend it. You're putting back pressure on it to try and keep it from cracking. First one, absolutely no cracking. Push it down. Take out another one. Again, keep the back pressure on it. No cracking whatsoever. And we do this one up by the bow. And there we have it. Not a single one has cracked. They've all got the shape. And now all we need to do is leave that to let it dry. You can speed up the process if you want by putting the dryer on it, which I'll do. And you can see we're getting a slight bit of cracking on this one here and here. I did these real fast for you. If I had done it slower, because this is actually the most gentle part of the on the mold to bend. So if I should have been getting breaking, it should have been here or here. But anyway, there's a little cracking here and a little cracking here. None on this one, none on this one, none on this one. So out of that, this will turn to a bent piece similar to this. And then we go on the pre-arc, which I have a very thin slitting saw, and we slit the individual frames to fit on the mold. Now to secure the ribs in place, you have to put a clamp that pulls the bottom in and then the sides. And so we take each of the general ribs that we put out and find a place that it'll fit properly and pull it in. Sometimes after you've bent them on the mold, you find you're still getting some spring back here, just a little bit. So I'll put them in a clamp, pull them in, and then I'll just heat them up for 30 seconds to a minute, leave them, and then eventually when you take them out, you'll see that they have retained their shape and that there's no spring back whatsoever. Back to our jigs again. We've pinned the boat to a building board, and we're going to follow the technique that you've seen building large frame boats, where you secure the frame to keep it tight and close and to follow the shape. So to do that, we pinned the boat onto this building board, and we have some pins we can take out. And we've drawn the boat on, and we've put a mark where every single rib is going to go, and now we're going to drill a hole so that I can push the ribs into this building board. So now we can start fitting them in. So here is one. Here's number two. Here's number three. So there's 12. You have to keep them a little bit longer. This one's a little short. And do the same thing for all of them. So now what we're going to do is continue to bend each individual frame on the mold, and then place the pieces in the jig and use some heat to really get them good and tight and fitting the mold correctly. So we mount them back onto the mold and put some heat on it and try and bend them into place. So we keep going until we get them all done. But it's as the more we do it, the easier it gets. We're waiting on a few of the pieces. We've touched them up a little bit to strengthen them. And as soon as they're dry, we'll stick them to the building board and sand them so that they're just flush of the mold. Well, this is taking much longer than I thought, so we're going to break this into a second video, and we'll see you in the next one in a week or so.